What's up everyone, Christopher Fogel here, your Purdue Extension-Decatur County Health and Human Sciences educator. And I'm back for a new installment of my sweet new journey. And pun definitely intended. For those of you that maybe haven't seen my first video, I'll include that link in the description below and you can check it out later, but I'm a newly diagnosed diabetic. And if nothing else, this helps explain one thing: why I'm so sweet. But besides that, it also gives me an opportunity and a great platform to share my experience of someone who is a newly diagnosed individual. And this platform is awesome because I'm somebody that has a graduate degree in health. And I know a fair amount about diabetes. But when I heard the words that I was a diabetic, I forgot about a lot of that. And with over 30 million other Americans that currently have and champion the disease of diabetes, I felt that it was important to educate and to inform. And that's what I intend these videos to be, just that. Based on my personal experience and evidence-based research. I never intend them to be diagnostic. Because in the short 2 months that I have been diagnosed, I have had plenty of appointments and meetings with a plethora of healthcare workers, ranging from physicians to nurses to registered dietitians to diabetic educators and to representatives from manufacturers of insulin pumps. Diabetes is a chronic illness that currently has no cure. So to attempt to self-diagnose based on videos is next to impossible. So please take the information that I share to empower yourself, to empower the general public, and to gain a better understanding of the chronic illness that we know as diabetes. Now, it's been really interesting over the past couple months of trying to answer this idea of what is diabetes. And just a minute ago, I did mention how there are over 30 million people that are championing this disease, because I've learned that I want to use positive language whenever I talk about it. Because one of the things that can impact my blood sugar is stress. And I'm learning all kinds of stuff because, as I said, when I heard you have diabetes, I forgot everything I knew about it. And I've also learned how many misconceptions there are or misunderstandings there are in the general public of what is the disease and how do you handle it. And I hope that I can answer a lot of those questions in these videos. And some of those questions are things like, well, how did you know that you had diabetes? So what kind of signs and symptoms did you have? So are you type 1 or type 2? Or did your feet ever tingle? You work out all the time. I never would have expected you to have diabetes. Is that the Wilford-Brimley disease? You're not that big. Why do you have diabetes? Does this mean you can never eat sugar again? If I find you passed out, what should I do? You don't look sick. Are you gonna go blind? Should you be eating that? I don't. I pee a lot. Do I have diabetes? Do you have to prick your finger all the time? Should you be drinking that? What's that weird thing on the back of your arm? Do you have to give yourself injections? Nope, I couldn't do it. I wouldn't be able to give myself injections. So you have to do insulin? So it like runs in your family or something? Now, before we get too in the weeds on some of the more specifics, let's first discuss the basics. What is diabetes? And diabetes ultimately, for those that are diagnosed, is a chronic lifelong illness that affects how our body turns food into energy. Now, most of the food that we eat is broken down into sugar, also called glucose, and released into the bloodstream. Once the sugar is released into the bloodstream, it causes our blood sugar to elevate, and that signals our pancreas to produce insulin. And insulin ultimately acts like a key to our cells to open it and accept that blood sugar to then convert it into energy for cellular activity. So basically, if you have diabetes, it means that either your body doesn't produce insulin at all, or you don't produce enough insulin, or your body doesn't use the insulin effectively. So when there isn't enough insulin, or maybe your cells stop responding to the insulin, this ultimately will cause your blood sugar to go up, which is an issue because chronic long-term elevated blood sugar is whenever we start to hear about all of those complications that we all associate with someone being a diabetic. It's important now to discuss the 3 common types of diabetes. There's type 1, type 2, and gestational diabetes. There's also a condition we'll discuss shortly that's referred to as pre-diabetes. With type 1 diabetes, it's important to note that it can occur at any age. It can affect any sex, any demographic, shape, or size. And what's happening internally basically is that the body no longer produces insulin. And with insulin therapy, along with other treatments, blood sugars can be managed in individuals with type 1. I myself am type 1, and on a daily basis, I take 4 to 5 injections on a daily basis. With type 2 diabetes, it's important to note that this is the most common form of diabetes. Basically, what's happening internally is that the body no longer is utilizing the insulin properly. While some people can manage type 2 diabetes with exercise and healthy eating, others will require some form of medication or insulin therapy. But the most important key with type 2 diabetes is eating a well-balanced diet. With gestational diabetes, it's important to note that it basically is a form of diabetes that develops in a pregnant woman that formerly didn't have any form of diabetes. And while this is completely manageable, it is also extremely important that it is identified as quickly as possible, because as manageable as gestational diabetes is, it also could affect the overall health of the mother and baby. And gestational diabetes does increase the risk of type 2 diabetes later in life for the mother. I also said that we would discuss the condition referred to as prediabetes. And prediabetes doesn't necessarily have symptoms associated with it. But what's important to note is that almost all individuals that are diagnosed with type 2 diabetes were pre-diabetic prior to that diagnosis. And that's important because there's about 88 million, or more than 1 in 3 individuals in America that are currently pre-diabetic. And that just means that your blood sugars are elevated, but they're not elevated enough to be diagnosed as a type 2 diabetic. And it can be reversed. Small lifestyle changes can help reduce that blood sugar level, whether it be diet or exercise or other lifestyle changes. It can be impacted greatly. And this is where working with an appropriate medical healthcare team can really have huge impacts on those individuals that are pre-diabetic. So it's important to note that even though you've been told that you are pre-diabetic, it doesn't mean that you are diabetic. All right, so that wraps it up for today. I want to thank everybody for hanging around and giving me the support. Even though I've only done 1 video with this particular video series, I've had multiple people reach out and say they're thankful I'm doing it, they're going to share it with family members, or they've learned something from that video. So if there are things that you would like to learn about diabetes or you'd like to see videos on, drop those in the comments below. Or send me a private message and let me know, and I'll do my best to get that information out. Because as much as I'm learning, I want you all to learn as well. So, as I said earlier, I'm doing awesome. My numbers are starting to balance out, and I don't look at diabetes much as a disease as I do as a lifestyle. As long as I adhere to my treatment plan, I exercise regularly, and I watch my diet, I am going to probably be healthier now than I was before the diagnosis. So until I see you next time.